we've had music from the beginning, way millions of years before language. So music is an integral part of us. And if all of a sudden we're deficient in music, we're deficient. Our brains are not going to work as well. Our bodies are not going to work as well. Just look at an athlete in the lead pack of a marathon and tell me they're not musical. Tell me there's not a drum beat there. Tell me there's not a rhythm there that's really, really consistent. And the most consistent runners from a rhythmic gait standpoint are the ones who win typically. And as you look back in the pack further and further, you see more irregularity in the rhythm. I am Dr. Phil Maffetone, and I'm a runegade. Really, I really am a runegade.
Runegade is what happens when two ordinary friends dare to practice the lost art of conversation to better understand what it means to be a runner, a human. Should we follow convention and play by the rules? Or would it be better to trust our guts? Each episode, you'll learn from the experts, the underdogs, the elites and non-elites, those doing big things, all in that curious quest of being just a little bit better tomorrow. In a world of runners, be a runegade.
We have a very special guest joining us on our podcast, on the Runegade, the author of the big book of endurance training and racing, and 19 other books, I believe. And it's Dr. Phil Maffetone. We love Dr. Phil. He is an internationally recognized researcher, educator, clinician, author, a runner, a musician, and a comedian. But Dr. Maffetone, he is the founder of the Maffetone Method, the low heart rate training. And we'll dive into that and get you introduced to what that means with the pioneer, the person who founded this, how he came across it, and how it blossomed from his early days of helping triathletes, most famously Mark Allen.
Coincidentally, that is my first and middle name.
Mark Allen? Are you serious?
Little known fact. There you go.
Oh, there we go. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be.
And,
Right. And I think with this, it's, at the root of it, this is a running podcast, but we tend to go into a lot of different areas with our guests. And I think with Dr. Maffetone, we have a huge opportunity today to just connect, overall wellness together with everything. So as, many of you maybe have been able to figure out over the last several podcasts, and if you can see just above my head, I am also a bit of a fan of the music and do see the benefits of slapping the bass from that's not a bass, I know that, but playing and how it makes me feel grounded. It's calming, soothing. It's the arts are something that I've always loved and tried to spend as much time and energy exploring a little bit of that. I'm not really the greatest athlete. I tend to run from time to time these days. I've played
you and I
sports
both, sir.
Growing up, but it's just part of my life, and I love that we have folks that join us on this podcast that can provide all kinds of different insights that just help you in all aspects of your life. So definitely looking forward to today.
What is the connection? Maybe there is a connection between music and health and a healthy mind. And a healthy mind, what's the connection to a healthy runner? I'm going to lean into you a lot on this one here, Runkle, because music, I love it. I have zero musical ability, as Mark knows. He's heard me sing and try to slap the bass. Slapping the bass, man. Not good.
You know what, though? It's about, it's rhythm. Like, think about, his heart rate training, like the beats and like his music. And I'd love to get into that a little bit more too, with how he, his creative process. And I haven't gone deep into his catalog of music yet because there's quite a bit out there, but is that a conscious thing for him to, slow down the songs depending on there's ballads, there's high energy types of songs out there. It's a huge continuum or spectrum of music out there. So really interested in hearing how he hones in on, his creative process and how he wants it to sound and overall tempo and things like that. I don't want to get that technical into it because I know this isn't, again, a music podcast, but
it can be a music podcast.
Let's maybe switch
it can be. Why
today.
can't it be? Okay,
it could be
so Dr. Maffetone, he's worked with Ironman triathletes, baseball players, football players, Olympians, and this is where it gets really cool. Here's the musicians he's worked with to help them on their health and wellness journey. James Taylor, Johnny Cash, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Rick Rubin, to name a few.
We could have a whole episode of just talking about how it was working with Rick. We love Rick. Rick, if you're listening, we love your podcast and everything that you've done to date.
Maybe he'll join us. Come on, Rick. You want to come on our podcast? I got the Rick glasses. They're in my other bag. I should go get them.
But Rick,
on a side note,
yeah,
I was on the train and I was wearing my blue light blocking orange glasses. I got the strangest looks in the world, but you know what? I don't care. I put them on. Keeps you just mellowed and relaxed. It feels really good.
Listen, I think people were just trying to figure out if you were Bono or not. And that's probably why you got the weird looks. They're like, am I in the presence of a celebrity here?
I was wearing a toque though, so I'd be more like the Edge, wouldn't I?
Fair enough. Yeah, you're somebody from U2 though. Definitely.
It's true. It's true. I love you too.
I love you too.
I love you too.
That got awkward fast. Sorry about that.
It's like everything in our life. It gets awkward really fast.
Yes.
It's always good until people get involved, right? And then it gets awkward fast.
That's true. Story of my life. That's awesome. So, Todd, before we get rolling here, tell us about what you did last weekend.
What I did last weekend. I had the best weekend of all time. If you follow me on Ultra Marathon Man, I shared a lot of videos, a lot of photos. We traveled to New York City. I was blessed and grateful that I got my ballot pulled to run I think it's 52nd, my third New York City Marathon. And what an event. That city is full of energy, but I got so much. We could do an entire episode because it all started on it all started on Thursday. We flew in and we got in to see Jimmy Fallon. That was fantastic. And I was able to see how they pulled a whole show together. And I was sitting there laughing, having a great time.
So
but I couldn't help but think about, hey, this is how we kind of produce our podcast a little bit. So that was great. And then went to the package pickup, visited with our friends at Ultra Running. Shout out, met some our new friends, talked to them about Ultra Kyle's episode. And I put in a good word for Tara Dower, Candy Mama, to get the Candy Mama Ultra Running shoes. I put in a good word. We'll see.
We want to see those on people's feet. So
Yep.
that is our goal, this podcast. Tara, thanks again for coming on.
They seem very receptive to it. It almost seemed like they were already working on it, maybe. That's the secret. I don't know.
How could they not? How could they not, right?
And then, Mark, I saw Rich Roll post on his Instagram that he was going to be on the On Running store and between 1 and 3 on Saturday. So I'm like, I'll head down there. Maybe I'll run into him. I met the On Running crew.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, you did. I met the On Running crew and talked to them for a little bit. And they said, you know what? Rich is upstairs getting ready to interview Centavesi, the Italian Olympic record holder.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fantastic. So I got upstairs. Jen and I went up there. We watched a 45-minute interview. It was just like listening and watching Rich's podcast in person. It was fantastic. And then we met him. I shook his hand. I told him thank you. He's my online mentor. Talked for a little bit. It was awesome.
So that sounds like quite the weekend. I don't know how you're going to top that.
I could have ended right there. I didn't have to do anything more. But then I got to run the marathon, and that was unbelievable. I met some great people on the way to the marathon. Because if anyone's ever thinking about doing the New York City Marathon, you'll underestimate the effort it actually takes to get to the start line. And it's basically a marathon just to get to the start line. So you wake up early, about 6 a.m. Well, no, I was up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. train or subway down into a South Ferry, hopped on the ferry to Staten Island, hopped on a bus, got to the village, and just hung out, just vibed on the island. It was sunny. I found a nice spot. I put my yoga mat down. I just lied in the sun, ate some food. And you know what? I put in a lot of the nuggets that we've been talking about over the last year into the race. I took more energy or more aid than you could ever imagine. I think I did 9 or 10 of my Marentette gels. And I did that technique that we were talking with Alex about, the David Roach technique, where you just bypass the tongue. You don't get sick. You don't get full. I could have took 20 Marentettes. I don't think I needed 20. I don't even think I needed 10. I wasn't moving that fast. But it was great. And there it is. There it is. I wore it proudly. Metal Monday, walking around the city.
That's awesome. You got some pretty neat, you picked up some nice swag or gear, all that stuff. I noticed your coats and shirts and all that good stuff. So cheers, Todd. That was
some great stuff.
What a great run, and kudos to you for making the Renegade podcast proud, and representing.
I handed out a lot of business cards.
It was going to be one of us. It was going to be one of us to run it, and I'm glad it was you.
Well, I think I found out, Mark, we actually don't need to run them. We just got to go and hang out with everybody because you meet so many interesting people. And we'll talk about that on a future show because I wanted intentionally not to be insular. I wanted to talk to a lot of people. So I hopped on the subway. I met a very interesting gentleman from Sweden. And you just make quick 5-minute connections and learn people. A lot of people running their first New York City Marathon, so I gave them a little bit of advice. I met up with the Path Project crew. We had a personal best crew meetup run on Saturday. It was fantastic.
So I guess it's if you go to the NYC Marathon to run or to hang out with your crew, there is an Athletic Brew for you. Today, this episode is brought to you by Path Projects. As always, our favorite shirts, shorts, hats, coat, everything that they have is just amazing. So Todd, myself, great fans. And we also enjoy Athletic Brew and Ultra. Can't thank Ultra Kyle enough for his generosity and the support of our podcast and coming on a couple of weeks back there. So Ultra, we love you. Hey,
Mark and
how are
Todd.
you doing?
Hey,
that's right. How are you doing?
How are you doing?
Nice to meet you.
it works.
You sound
to meet
great.
you.
Sound great. Look good. This is a
thanks.
first for us.
Thanks.
It's spot on right away. This is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is great. I could first time I could use my jokes from past performances. Your audience wouldn't know.
That's right.
Well, you don't know that, Dr. Phil. They might be listening to you on some other podcasts, and I know you were on the Trail Runner Nation a few episodes ago, and you got into your new career that you're launching into comedy, and that's really kind of what perked our interest on this conversation is this
which
well-roundedness.
podcast is that?
The Trail Runner Nation.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, I've been on that. They told me that it had been my 19th podcast with them. I had a hard time believing that, but
basically a crew member on that podcast.
Yeah,
third host.
We actually did one together. I was on tour on up the West Coast, I think, and we got together somewhere. We tried to do it in my RV, but there was too much equipment, music equipment, and just too much noise all around. So we ended up, I don't know where we went, somebody's kitchen. It was very strange, but they're great. I've been doing podcasts, gosh, I think from, when they first started to come out. I keep saying I'm not going to write another book. That was 2 or 3 books ago. But I'm not writing another book. You heard it here. I keep saying that on podcasts so that, it'll
It
force
sticks.
me not to do that.
It's a self-reminder. Dr. Maffetone, we're really good friends with Dr. Mark Cucuzella. He's been
Oh,
on
good.
twice.
Oh, has he? Good. Yeah, Mark, I've known for quite a while. I feel like I've watched him grow up
Well, he
into
calls
this
you his
world.
guru. He calls you a Jedi teacher.
Yeah.
Jedi. I don't know that I've been called. I've been called a lot of things. Jedi. That's interesting. I could use that.
Yes, yes.
Under like, he's a Jedi, Mark Cucuzella.
Yeah.
That's right.
Or well, it's better than like you're his Yoda, I guess, right? It's kind of the same thing, but not quite, I guess. But
Yeah, I have quoted Yoda before. Try not do line is such a good one. I wrote about that not too long ago. It's sort of an age-old philosophy that humans should never forget.
Absolutely. And like we all have our own running journeys, Dr. Maffetone. And I came across you from the Trail Runner Nation podcast and from Dr. Mark. And I got really familiar with you in previous podcasts. And I love the big book of endurance racing and training, or endurance training and racing. But really, it's a book about life as well. And what we really love is the evolution, what you've been sharing. And that's really what we want to talk to you about today, about well-roundedness, brain health, finding the joy. And if you can find the joy, how to manage stress and how to run forever, and just, weave those topics.
Yeah, makes sense. And running is sort of a downstream component of it all, and we have to look at it that way. Whatever it is we're doing as a natural athlete, and I think that's where we've gone off the trail, off the journey. We've made running a religion and forgotten about everything else, including the brain, which is not easy to do, but people do.
Maybe like we start with that topic. I would say that runners, when we're getting into running, they concentrate solely on the running itself, thinking that's everything. But there's the foundational blocks, and I think you touched on it. How important is a happy, healthy brain?
Well, the brain is the most important part of a runner, of an athlete, of a human being. We're human first, and our brain is what makes us human, uniquely human. We're all different, and so we don't want to emulate the running style of so and so, who is the latest and greatest. We want to run uh, based on our own needs, our own brain. How does our brain want to get us to run? And it does that based on, here are your strengths, here are your weaknesses. We're going to run in such a way that we adapt the best we can and perform the best we can from moment to moment. And the brain, supporting the brain with lifestyle factors like stress management and nutrition are just invaluable. And again, people in the running community sort of don't realize that. And I think now I'm not really good with names, Bob and Sam. I I'm not really good with names, so I can't. For the moment, I'm not remembering the original founder of Nike, who was the coach. What was his name?
Was that Phil? Not Phil Knight.
No, Phil Knight was
Bill
the
Bowerman.
business guy who jumped on board.
That's right. Bill Bowerman wasn't
Bill
it?
Bowerman. Bill, yes, Bill. And I worked with his coach, uh, who became Salazar's coach at some point. Don't remember his name either. Um, Bill said, training hard is not what it takes to be a great runner. Being intelligent does. And we have this no pain, no gain thing in the world. It's been going on for a long time. Actually, um, Benjamin Franklin started that way back when. But no pain, no gain has become the mantra of exercise and sports, and it continued with running. And so, uh, that's where people go, because more is better. Faster means you're gonna, if you train fast, you're gonna race fast. That came from the track and field coaches who came over to endurance running when the running boom began to boom, and their attitude, which has some validity, is we trained people on the track by having them run fast, and so they raced fast, but they were running 100 meters and 200 meters, 400 meters. uh, you know you're fatiguing at 200 meters. You're slowing down coming up to the finish line. 400 meters, you're slowing down at the midway point, going full out
Mhm.
with your speed. In endurance running, it's a whole different sport. People don't understand that. It's the physiology of it. And there's a whole different mix of fuels. There's a whole different brain component to it. We use different muscles, of course, and um, so on and so forth.
And from my side, I've been able to greatly benefit from people like Todd in my life, where he got into running and I would hear about it. We worked closely together, and so I would hear about his development and overall improvements and things that he's learning from your book and from others, from podcasts. And eventually I caught the bug and started running a little bit myself. But I had that initial mentality of trying to go faster and trying to show improvements and really like clocking my times initially, and then would result in those injuries, right? And thankfully for things like, I know technology is good for some people and not others, but with this and tracking it, Todd was able to say, well, Mark, this is what you did. You were going really fast right now. And it really taught me to slow down and focus on my heart rate and all of these things that, again, not diving into the books as of yet, but from just Todd's learnings, the
Yeah,
sharing and the community of it has just been wonderful.
yeah, it's great. You didn't have to read the book because you have Todd. That's
Not yet, but it will. I will.
but the
Whether he
the
wanted to hear it or not, he
yes,
heard it.
um, the technology you mentioned is only important because it's a way. It's a biofeedback device to get us out of that bad no pain no gain mode that
Mm,
people are stuck in. And that's what kind of saved me from from a clinical standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, in the very beginning of my career, because I was using education to try to help people understand that going faster every day, or running more miles, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a better athlete.
mhm.
Um, and so I was sort of pushing them toward training intuitively, because we all have instincts and we all should know how to train, but we don't, because we're confronted by the memories of our gym coaches, um, our earliest sports coaches, um, which is just, it's more of the no pain, no gain. And here we are looking like, Monday Night Football commentators. We hear it on TV. I assume today, I haven't had a TV in 40 years, but I assume it's still going on, where they say, well, here comes Big Joe. He's tough because he plays hurt. Well, Big Joe is stupid, and so is his coach.
Mhm.
But you hear that as a little kid or as a new runner, and you can't ignore it. And that no pain, no gain mentality is further flamed, and and then of course when we train with other people, you don't train with other people. You go out for your Sunday long run. You're not training. You're racing.
Yep.
That's what egos do. You go faster than you want, longer than you want. You
Hmm.
try to keep up with people that are faster than you. They try to keep up with people who are faster than, and the lead guy is, you know, probably having a good run.
Yeah. Well, then, Dr. Maffetone, like, how did you come across? Because you are the founder of the Maffetone Method, the famous MAF heart rate, how to calculate what zone that you should be in, basically to stay away from this no pain, no gain zone. Walk us through that journey, and what was the aha moment when that came to you?
Well, there were a lot of aha moments. There still are, actually. I had several today. I'm writing a scientific paper. Um, and it was well, there's several things that brought that on. Uh, the desire to help people and the fact that I want to help this person. Oh yeah, and he's a runner. And that's a challenge for me because hey, now I can help him run better, and I get excited because I'm a runner too. And um, so um, it really began with more of a philosophy than any technique or any desire to do anything other than the desire to help people. I knew I wanted to do that really early on, like in high school. Um, and I learned from being an athlete and seeing people get hurt in sports from high school through college um, that we're all individuals. And why is the coach giving us workouts that everyone's supposed to do? That didn't make sense. And so I would never follow anything the coach said, and I never got in too much trouble because I was always really good. Um, so fortunately, um, as I got out and got into practice and started working with athletes, um, I had that philosophy as a foundation, and it was a big part of it was whatever you're doing in your life, whether it's training or um, teaching or you're a parent, whatever you're doing, you want to have the best human performance possible, and you want to have both good health and good fitness. And so the differentiation there between health and fitness was something another philosophical thing. I learned that early. Um, and with athletes, and I've worked in all sports, it's all the same. People are willing to sacrifice their health for more fitness. And for me, as a clinician, as a healthcare clinician, that was unacceptable. And I've dismissed patients, I've dismissed athletes who didn't want to uh, not do that. They were willing to sacrifice their health for more fitness. And so that became a very important part of what I did. And then everything else was sort of how do we do that? How do we impress upon someone that they need to train slower to develop the aerobic system? Well, the heart monitor at the time, there were no heart monitors other than the ones in the hospitals that were used for cardiac patients. And there were these big, bulky things that went over the shoulder and around the chest. And, you know, they had these big boxes and you could hear the heart rate. And if you look down your shirt, you could see your heart rate. And I became known on the local track where I would always bring a lot of athletes every Thursday, I think, for years. When when bystanders would see women do that, they say, "Oh, it's one of Maffetone's athletes." Um, but it would be a couple of years before the first wireless heart monitor, and I thought at the time that this barbaric heart monitor was a biofeedback device, and I was already using biofeedback. I thought this was like all other biofeedback devices, something I use in my office or something we go to the track and do, or something an athlete might use for 3 or 4 days on their own, just to get the biofeedback effect so they know what pace they should be running at. They feel it. I don't want them to follow a formula. I want them to feel what a 142 heart rate is, or a 150 heart rate. It didn't work. People needed continual reinforcement. And so people started buying heart monitors for that reason. There were very few athletes who were intuitive enough, instinctual enough to go out and train just where they need to be.
We're happy to share with our Renegade listeners, coming Sunday, September 14th, 2025, the Windsor Waterfront Half Marathon and 5K, billed to be the flattest, fastest, most scenic, and more importantly, the most family, spectator-friendly event. Running along the Windsor waterfront, you have the Detroit River at your side, you have the Detroit skyline serving as that big city backdrop, and it's showcasing all the best of Windsor, Ontario. This is the half marathon or 5K that you've been looking for, the race that you must put in your calendar. On episode 15, Brian Allison joined the Renegade and shared all the detail, the planning, the race day specifics that the team has been focused on delivering as big city racing comes back to Windsor, Ontario, a short drive across the US border. This is the perfect tune-up for your fall marathon. And you have the time. Time to start your running journey, time to train for your first race, or time to plan and be part of a big thing coming back to Windsor, Ontario. Renegade is proud to have the Windsor Waterfront Half Marathon and 5K be a friend of the podcast, and we are looking forward to seeing you at the start line Sunday, September 14th, 2025.
And that's pretty much how I got my first heart rate device too as well. Talking to Todd, I think I picked up my very first Garmin, it's a couple years ago. Now it's pretty much obsolete, but that's where I first started to really see that improvement, where it was, okay, keeping things down. I think at the time I was trying to keep it around 140 or less. At that point, that knee injury went away. Kind of switched up my shoes a little bit to something a little more minimalist too, again, as recommended by Mr. Todd over here. Not quite a doctor, but definitely able to share some great
He's
insights.
spreading the word. That's
It
that's
is
more
Just
important.
spreading the word. That's right. An aggregator of all the great information from the doctors and the experts.
Well, and that's it. And and I found like that with the slowing down, it brings you more peace when you're running. I mean, I'm not in races at all, Dr. Phil.
What a wonderful summary. I mean, your knee problem went away. You realized you needed better shoes. You became one with the world.
That's I found myself. Yeah, it's just been, I haven't looked back yet. Right, it's been really good. But I definitely found a difference though from competing against myself, and whether it was an injury or whether you just didn't quite enjoy the run as much because you were so focused on gasping for air and just finishing a few seconds better than your last run. And I'm not fast either, so it was a lot too fast, and it was great to have that kind of reinforcement there to just take it easy and slow down a bit.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that's I hear that all the time. I've heard it from the beginning. Of course, in the beginning, and you didn't mention this, but I know you went through it. You cursed at the monitor. You cursed at Todd. You cursed at me. How am I going to get? How could I run this slow? I don't think he told you to run at night, but that's what I would tell my athletes. Because
really,
we're afraid people are going to see us running slow. So run at night. People won't see you. Or wear a ski mask. Come on.
ski mask works. Yeah.
Well, Mark runs through a cemetery, so there'd be very low judgment
Oh,
from the folks around him.
yeah.
Like,
That's true.
they're just probably happy that
They're
someone's
just
moving.
going to be
I would say.
jealous.
Yeah, they haven't said
Exactly.
too much. Yeah.
Well, and Mark, you mentioned it there. So you were targeting 140 beats per minute. So for the new folks who listen, we have a lot of new runners on the podcast. And the formula is 180 minus your age. And that is the threshold to stay below so that your body
doesn't build up stress. Is that correct, Dr. Phil?
It's a good summary. I have to chime in because it's not 180 minus your age. It's 180 minus your age being the first part. And then you have to find the categories. There's four categories that you fit into that further individualize the formula. You want to individualize this formula. You don't want to, it's not everybody does 180 minus the age. It's that 180 minus the age is the first step, and the next step is the hard part where you really have to be honest. People cheat at 180 minus the age as it is, but now they get to the point where they see these things. Oh, I'm not injured. These crutches are, well, they're just temporary.
Fashion statement.
I'm not on medication. I'm taking low blood pressure stuff and I have heart, you can't lie to yourself. So you're asked to go through these, all these health and fitness factors and adjust the 180 minus the age number to your particular needs. And when in doubt, this is the important part, when in doubt, go to a lower number, because you're not going to do any harm if you have a higher number, even if it's 3 beats higher. Some people are very, very sensitive, and 3 beats higher can make all the difference in the world between not progressing and progressing really well.
Yep. You touched on it right there. The runners that I know that are familiar with the formula, they always have the plus adjustments. And they're like, well, yeah, exactly. I can run at the +5 and plus, and it's funny, and they shouldn't. Or they'll go every single run at exactly the heart rate. And that's probably not the best.
It's like people who are addicted, to things. You're addicted to running fast. And so now you're going to lie to avoid having to run slow. I had a patient, true story, who and I didn't see him one-on-one, but I saw him sometime later, and he said, yeah, I've been following the formula using the heart monitor, but nothing's happened. It's been, 3 months. I said, well, how did you derive your training heart rate, your MAF heart rate? And he went through the process. I subtracted my age from 180 and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, I added 10 because I ran track in high school.
Oh, just a bonus there.
I don't know if that's an adjustment, is it, Doctor?
It's not. I haven't seen that. I haven't come across that in my research. But it's what people do. It's human nature to crave things we can't have, or it's an addictive behavior. It's like sugar addiction. People will say, well, I can eat a little sugar. Can you smoke a few cigarettes? Sugar in moderation is okay. Is tobacco in moderation okay? How about heroin? So, we need to put these things into the perspective of our striving for optimal health and being the best athlete we can as individuals, and no matter how old we are.
And it's not just for athletes too. Like you just touched on it there. If you're striving to balance your health and your fitness, if you can balance health and fitness, and you'll get fitter, but you can also feel better, and maybe you'll become a better worker. You become a better father, a better human, just because you fundamentally from your core feel better. So what is it about being stressed or the training at a higher heart rate? What does it do to our body, and why is it so bad?
Well, you hit the right word, stress. It's a negative stress. I mean, stress can be positive, but it's a negative stress because we're exceeding our physiological limitations at the moment. If we train right, we may get to the point where we can train that way all the time, every day, without hurting anything, but we're not there yet. So we have to find our level, our starting point, essentially. And if we don't do it, if we can't do it, if we won't do it, we're going to have problems. we're gonna get in trouble. We're gonna have to go back to the drawing board, to the starting line, and do it again. So do it right to begin with. Um, um, you use the 180 formula properly, and don't be swayed by this subjective emotional thing of, gee, this feels really slow. I can tell you that every athlete I've worked with, not everyone, because some of them are, some of them didn't have to run slow, but 95% of them had to run slower. And so whether they started out at running slower, meaning they had to run 10 minutes a mile, or running slower meant running 8 minutes a mile, it's the same thing, relatively speaking. If you're running at a 140 heart rate, it's a 140 heart rate, period. That's the most important thing. How fast you go is really secondary, but what's important is that speed will continue to improve. And that means not only that you're going to be a better athlete, because that increase in pace in your training will translate into an increased pace in racing, but that increased pace in training infers that you're getting healthier because you're burning more fat. Originally when I started looking at these heart rate changes and started having people check their heart rate, I originally thought, wow, this is a great weight loss program, because that's indeed what it was doing. But then I realized, oh, hey, because I would, like I say, I'd go to the track and I'd watch people. And now I was starting to travel with athletes, so I would see them warm up. I would watch them race, and I would be able to compare the heart rates they were at with the gait, for example, their breathing rates, all kinds of things. So on the track, I would see an athlete, and I noticed that the higher the heart rate, the more irregular the gait, which is how I came up with these ideas to begin with. I didn't have the 180 formula until someone asked me how we could do that on our own without having to come and see you. I said, that's a good idea. Don't come and see me, because I was too busy. And then I thought, well, there's got to be, mathematically speaking, there's got to be a simple way to explain what I'm observing clinically. And it took a while. And that's when the 180 formula was born, and went through a few tweaks over the next months and year or two. And I added some things to it. I added over fat to the formula because the word over fat is technically the term referring to excess body fat that impairs health or fitness. And it's easy to figure that out. You measure your waist and your height. Your waist should be less than half your height. And if it's not, you're over fat. And so now in those cases, you've got to reduce your heart rate even more.
Interesting. See, I usually just give my gut a big squeeze, and that's my indicator there. But I did have a quick question for you too. So, with regards to overexertion and that stress that you're putting on yourself, physically, cortisol levels going up, but then there's the mental aspect as well. So, in a full 360 treatment on a person, like, do you then recommend like offsets on the other side? So it's whether it's meditation or yoga, or is there something that is shown to really help improve somebody's overall, maybe well-being's not the word, but just to maybe reduce that inflammation after maybe overexerting themselves on a
without
run?
a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, first of all, being healthy will protect you from stress better than anything.
Yeah.
Better than any one thing. If you meditate, you'll meditate better when your brain is healthy than if your brain is not healthy. So we have to keep looking at, what's the top of the chain here? What's the priority? Let's not address downstream issues. Let's address the causes of the problems.
Mhm.
But I think the concept of health is what's important first, because education, real education, is very important for people. As soon as you use the word stress, people think of it as a negative thing, and people think of it as a mental or emotional thing. Stress can be physical. Bad shoes is a great example of stress. People who sit a lot during the day,
Mhm.
big stress.
That's us.
Dental problems that you're not taking care of, and um, having excess body fat is a physical stress. And then there are biochemical stress, which is typically the metabolism,
Mhm.
hormones. Those are biochemical stresses that those are biochemical factors that can induce stress when they're not working well. Imbalances in hormones, imbalances in fat and sugar burning are examples of biochemical stresses. And mental emotional health education is a big part of that, and understanding stress is a big part. But I have an article. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's something like the stress list um, for reducing, for managing stress or something like that. And in that article, and I would do this on a lot of patients, I would say, look, I want you to go home and make 3 columns, 3 stresses: physical, biochemical, mental, emotional, and take, the next few days or a week, as long as you need, and write down all the stresses that you have that are physical, biochemical, mental, emotional. And now you could see your stresses right there in front of you. Oh, your shoes don't fit. Well, come on, how much does it take to get rid of that stress?
Mhm.
So we get rid of that stress. You hang out with this person that you really hate. Oh, gee, okay, we're not going to hang out with them. If it happens to be, your partner, so be it. Um, uh, and so forth. And so when people see the stresses and they get rid of the ones that they can easily get rid of, they can more easily tolerate, because we have a stress mechanism built into our brain. People can more easily tolerate the stresses that remain. It's really quite simple. But getting healthy is such an important stress reducer, because we adapt to the stresses when we're healthy, which we can't do when we're not healthy. That's another important value of a healthy brain.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there, and something so interesting, especially with your career, helping people get healthy. You work with some really great musicians. I see you worked with James Taylor, Johnny Cash, the Red Hot Chili Peppers to help them get healthy. What was that like?
They were, just regular people. They happened to write great songs, or be well known, or I worked with a lot of famous CEOs or politicians. Well, don't tell anybody that. Um, Scientists. So, they're all people, and you have to overcome that hang up that we have in society, where, we get Google-eyed when we see somebody who's well known. We're all well known by somebody.
It's true.
So all I would say is that it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, but the local runner who can't run because of ongoing injuries and exhaustion, um, uh, and a person who wants to um, just run regularly without pain because all our friends are doing it, and um, um, that's a wonderful feeling that I would get. And the fact that, if this person continues to progress and ends up winning a medal in the world championships. That's nice too. But we all have our things, and to see people accomplish whatever those things are, whatever those goals are, is wonderful.
I think it speaks to
Yeah,
why you like to help people.
flying in a private jet is nice too.
True.
We all have to
But is
experience
that
that at least once, right?
Yeah.
but is that what sparked your or helped stoke the musical fire that you have, Dr. Phil? Because I know you have a new album that just came out, Beware of Mediocrity. I'll say that again. I'll cut that in the show notes. Beware of Mediocrity. And
Beware mediocrity.
And you are a prolific songwriter, and you have multiple albums. But is that what kind of stoked the fire of your musical, or were you always musical?
No, I grew up in the 60s, and if you grew up in the 60s, you can't graduate the 60s unless you're a music fanatic.
Yes.
You have to know all the singer-songwriters and all the things they said. And I embraced that. It was a big part of my life, big part of my existence. And in school, I always wanted to learn music. I always wanted to play music. And I was never a good student, so they always would say, well, you can't take another class in music because you can't even pass English. So it never happened. And being a consumer in music was pretty okay, and I continued doing that up until 20 years ago, when I woke up as a songwriter. I didn't wake up and say, gee, I think I'll be a songwriter, or I think I'll dabble in songwriting. I didn't really know anything about music to speak of. I didn't really play much of anything. I just knew that humans were songwriters. We've been songwriters from the beginning. It's how we communicated. It's how we helped expand our brain, grow our brain into what it is today. And I wasn't. And I was sort of saying to myself, well, I need to be more human. And I haven't been writing music, and I need to do that. And I realized after, it was a very intense experience. It was an incredible passion. I woke up and I paced all day. I paced the next day and thought, this is really intense. I can't become a songwriter because of all the things I have to do to accomplish that while I'm in the midst of this career. So I quit my job, ran off to LA, and
Really?
And the rest is history. Oh, that is amazing. So you woke up, became, did you follow a MAF method towards songwriting then? Like just a little bit at a time, like start on the, maybe something with, I guess it really depends on the complexity that you like to write with, right? Like what is maybe your first song that you recorded and played and you're like, hey, this is where I want to go and I can make more of these. And then I'm sure the creative juices just started flowing there at that point, and interacting with the folks that Todd mentioned too as well, musicians, and I know Rick Rubin's in there too as well. So just these great creative minds. I can only imagine the conversations you would have been able to have with them over the years too as well.
Yeah, you're right. You're influenced by that. Although I had seen a lot of those musicians before I became a songwriter. So I guess maybe the stage was set. I don't know. But I think what I learned in practice, what I learned about helping people be healthy and be fit, all those positive lifestyle factors, yeah, they contributed to songwriting, especially the brain. And I remember when I first realized that there's always a song waiting to come out. I thought, oh yeah, I kind of knew that because I always had things coming out. That's how I developed the 180 formula, the 2-week test, this and that. And, so that creativity, I had experienced before, not so much thinking that it was a creative endeavor. But it it was a part of the journey that was the continuation of the journey, which was expanding the mind more and more. We should be expanding our mind as we age. Our brain has the capability to be healthier and healthier with age, unlike our body, unfortunately. We don't run as fast. We can't sprint as fast. I'm still pretty strong, but I'm not as strong as I was when I was, 20, 25, 30, 40. But the brain can keep doing more and more things. And I realized very early in songwriting, that this was applicable. This creative process was applicable to songwriting as well. And a part of it was sort of letting the brain take over. We do that in a race, we're in a 10K race or a marathon, and we know we're just passing the 5 mile mark, or the 12 mile mark in a marathon. And we don't have to calculate how much energy we have left. We don't have to calculate how much further it is, and should we adjust our breathing or our gait, because the brain is already doing that for us. It's really an amazing thing what the brain is doing. And so when I say the most important part of a runner is the brain, that's one of many examples. But in songwriting, and like all creative endeavors, that process is going on all the time. There's always a song, and there's always ideas, and we always have these aha moments. That means we're shifting our state of consciousness into a state where we're going to be able to flow out this song, or this idea, or something we've been thinking about for days, and we can't figure it out. How do I fix that gutter? All of a sudden we wake up in the middle of the night. Oh yeah, it just needs a screw here.
Hey Renegades, a big part of the Renegade Podcast is sharing with you, our listeners, the stuff that works for us. And we have an excellent friend of the podcast, Path Projects. They're focused on functional designs, innovative materials, and apparel that looks great in the city, and gear that excels on the most grueling of trails. They offer a complete range of technical gear and apparel for today's modern athlete, and they're constantly innovating. And now, the Montera collection, a jogger and a hoodie, all-day sweats with serious performance chops, ultra soft 4-way stretch fleece, allowing you to smoothly transition from daily wear to cool weather training. And for our listeners, use the code TRP10 for 10% off your order for a limited time. We'd like to thank Path Projects for being a great friend of the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you find in your writing process too that you're more autobiographical in nature of the songs, or do you put yourself in the position of a character when you're writing? Is it just about a thought or a concept? Because, beware of mediocrity. You're anything but mediocre. So, but like obviously it's in your opening lyrics or steer clear of me. So I'm just trying to understand, like, where were you at when you were writing that song, and what was the perspective that you were taking?
The answer to the first part is that most of my songs are not autobiographical. However, as the great psychiatrist Carl Jung said, our creative output are examples of our personalities. So a different personality, in the case of Beware Mediocrity, wrote that song. And the only thing I could figure, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what a lot of my songs are about. People tell me sometimes what they think, and I'm amazed sometimes at the things people come up with. I'm impressed. But my vision after I wrote that, and when I decided I was going to record it, so it went on the list and I started playing it more and more, I realized it was a song about sort of the devil, the mediocrity devil, who was, it was him as the character. Beware of me. He was admitting to the world, beware of me. And this is an idea that's been pondered in humanity from, at least verbally, from the time we had language. And I think on my liner notes, I have a quote from C.S. Lewis about mediocrity. But I had I looked these things up, and I had all kinds of people that were saying things about, watch out for mediocrity. I didn't realize there were so many of that. But the idea of mediocrity is one of the earliest philosophical ideas I came upon. I never wanted to be normal. And my career in sports and in healthcare and, as a clinician, kind of proves that. I didn't do what most coaches did. I didn't do what most healthcare practitioners did, obviously. And, just the concept of individuality is, these days, people, they want to put you in a box. You want to put yourselves in a box in many cases. Don't do it. We're way more than that. We're more powerful. We're much better than that. And so that's sort of I guess the gist of the song. And a lot of the other songs on the album sort of fit that bill. I had some that I would have included in the album, but they didn't match the mediocrity thing. And then I had a couple left over from the last album that I didn't do, that I thought, oh, this is a mediocrity song. And then I had the Joni Mitchell song. I mean, Joni she could have written Beware Mediocrity as well.
That's amazing.
What is it about music in our brains? Like, what does music do to our brains, Dr. Phil?
Well, we've had music from the beginning, way millions of years before language. So music is an integral part of us. And if all of a sudden we're deficient in music, we're deficient.
Okay.
Our brains are not going to work as well. Our bodies are not going to work as well. Just look at an athlete in the lead pack of a marathon and tell me they're not musical. Tell me there's not a drum beat there. Tell me there's not a rhythm there that's really, really consistent. And the most consistent runners from a rhythmic gait standpoint are the ones who win typically. And as you look back in the pack further and further, you see more irregularity in the rhythm.
And I would even add, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I would even add that music isn't just a human thing. It is life.
It is
birds.
Life.
Look at nature, and there's music everywhere you look.
Yeah. Even mice sing. You can't hear a mouse sing unless you get really, really, really close, and then you probably don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's like MICKEY.
But yeah, and so what music also does to the brain is it does something we often neglect after we are children. It brings out our inner children, because what it does is it makes connections with neurons that we've never made before. Those are the aha moments. And that's what the concept of expanding the mind is all about. We've made connections, new connections we've never made in our life, because we heard this song we've never heard. There's two ways to use music to improve the brain and body. One is to listen to the songs that we've loved for all these years or however long we've loved them. And that's typical when you talk to people. That it's usually, going back to when you're 17 or 18 years of age, when you first fell in love, when you were first an independent human being, when you were first whatever. You relate to certain songs, and we all have these oldies that we love hearing. Hearing them again brings us back, and the studies show that when we listen to those songs, we physiologically become younger. What a deal. I mean, talk about, instead of carbo loading before a race, listen to some songs, because you're going to accomplish a lot more. The other thing the brain loves, and this is what we've done from before birth, through childhood into early adulthood, we surprise our brain. We surprise it with all kinds of things, all kinds of sensory information, things we hear, see, touch, smell, taste. Every sensory input into the brain that we're not familiar with is a surprise. Even if it's not good, it's a surprise. And the brain loves surprises. And my favorite story is of the concert pianist who I had talked to about brain health. And one of the things I suggested was that he listen. He was an obsessive pianist who only wrote and listened to piano concertos, sort of a specialist. I suggested he listen to a Nirvana song. And a few days later, I get a message like, what was that? That was the worst thing I've ever heard. Why did it, Well, it surprised his brain. He got that aha moment. He got connections in the brain he never made before, musical connections. What a deal. And it wasn't much longer after that I get another message saying, I was playing this concerto the other day and I realized that the changes, the changes were similar to what Nirvana was doing in that song you sent me.
What was it, lithium, or what'd you go with?
I think it was the Teen Spirit song.
It Smells Like Teen Spirit, yeah.
Yeah. Which is an amazing song. I mean.
Oh, absolutely.
It is about surprising the brain. And this is what really intrigues me, because this is where a hypothesis that I'm developing in my brain. And you try to make it personal, right? So I love music. I love all types of music. I have no rhythm. I have to really work on rhythm. We had Dr. Lawrence Van Lingen on a couple episodes ago, and he talked about the shape of running, like the movement of running. And I kind of saw myself as maybe that I need to have a better rhythm, better movement to help my brain be healthier and surprise the brain. So I was talking to Mark. I just came back from New York City. I went to the New York City Marathon. And normally I'd be really quiet and I wouldn't talk to too many people. I decided on my way down to the start line to talk to as many people as I possibly can, to surprise the brain, to try to make it healthy. Is this a hypothesis that's any legs, or is this a terrible idea, Dr. Phil?
It makes sense as long as that doesn't stress you in a negative way. It would stress me. I don't want to talk to anybody, and I'd say the majority of professional athletes, they have a pregame routine. They have a pregame face. They don't want to talk to anybody. The same with musicians before they go on stage. I'm in a zone. I don't want to be interrupted from that zone. But there are some who want to be really social because that feeds their brain. So it depends on where you are. But you're right about the rhythmicity of running, because it's essential. And you do have rhythm. You just haven't developed it.
Right.
And I have an article, there's a couple of articles. I don't remember what's in that big yellow book on the cerebellum and the brain, and how it helps our gait. But there's an area of the brain in the back that works with the motor cortex, which sends messages to the muscles to be rhythmic. And now you're going to change your rhythm. Now you're going to change it again, and you're going to now you're going to adjust it because you're on a hill. But the rhythm is almost perfect. And one of the things I do to help people develop that rhythm is called marching. And these articles talk about that. And basically, you just take a metronome, which you can get on your phone for free. You put the metronome on, say, 80 beats a minute. It'll click off, every beat, every beat you'll hear and see. This is a biofeedback device, basically. And you're going to march to the beat. And if you can march to the beat at 80, just speed it up a little more, march to the beat. And now go out and walk. See if you can walk to the beat. See if you can run to the beat. There's a good chance you'll get off course relatively quick if you're aware of this problem. And if you would use your metronome on a regular basis when you walk and run or move, you will develop this brain-body connection quite well, and you will instantly be a better runner. How you can measure that, it's hard to say, but you will would not be unusual to see your training pace get faster. Your gait will improve because the rhythmic effect is a natural effect, and if that's distorted, it's an irregularity that can impair your gait, require you to use more energy to get from point A to point B, and so forth.
See, Mark, I think that's why when Mark and I run together, he's a good runner. He's very musical, and he's got that rhythm. So maybe that's the cerebellum has already got those neural connections. He's already got that, and he's working on it.
We're born with it, but we sometimes lose it. I lost it early on. I don't remember much from before the age of 14 or 15, literally. But I can remember not moving very well, being yelled at in gym class, for example. Gosh, the things they did to us back then. But yeah, the rhythmic component of running is, it's in the list of top 10 things you need to check and make sure you're doing well.
Yeah. And I think, Todd, you did mention that your secret sauce for doing so well at the New York City Marathon was, work with the flow rope, right? And then also listening to a lot of Shakira to get your hips going in the right rhythm, right, with your runs. So yes. There is something
She'll
to
get
it
your
with
hips
music.
moving.
She will. So
that's right.
We'll just, we'll share that.
Lots of music playing, let me tell you.
Yeah, unfortunately they have, and this is a negative side of music. Unfortunately, they play industry music often. The music industry comes up with their own music that began years ago with groups like the Monkees.
Mm-hmm.
These guys weren't even musicians, but the music industry created it, a made-for-TV kind of thing, and they're still doing that today. They're still creating music using artificial intelligence. And if you put on the top 40 or the top 100 music of songs of today, most of them are going to be those industry music which is low quality and forgetful.
Mm-hmm.
You ask people who listen to a lot of the popular music of the day, what was popular last year or the year before, they won't know. I could tell you what was popular in 1967 or 69 or
It's funny that you mentioned the monkeys. My oldest daughter, she loves the monkeys, and she knows all the details, every fact you can have. We like a month ago we went to see Mickey Dolenz concert in
Wow.
Chicago, and I think Mickey was sharing during the concert that that's a struggle that they were facing with the music industry. Is that like, for example, Mike Nesmith, he was very musical. He was a songwriter, and he was writing songs, and they would tell him,
Yeah,
no,
this
no,
is
no,
what
that's
they,
not.
as they evolved as an act, as puppets of an act by TV and the music industry, they said, "Hey, wait a minute. We want to be more creative. We want input here." And of course, they didn't last very long, but they went on to have a good career, and they became more musical. And a lot of musicians went through that. Joni Mitchell went through that. Neil Young went through that. We have Crosby, Stills, and Nash because of that. Graham Nash was with the Hollies, and they were told by their record company that their next album is going to be all covers, all Dylan covers. And Graham said, "No, I'm quitting the band." David Crosby, the same thing. The Byrds, he was an integral part of the Byrds. They were already doing covers of Dylan, and he said, "We could write our own music. Why are we doing that?" So he left. And of course, Stephen Stills was with Buffalo Springfield, and he moved on for stresses similar to that. And they got together and said, "Hey, let's do our own thing."
We love Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They're fantastic.
Yeah. So I wonder if going forward we're gonna have to start putting AI free on the cover of our album covers and Spotify and whatnot. Right?
Maybe
getting to that point.
The AI thing is such hype. We've had it since computers were first invented, but we didn't call it artificial intelligence. Now we do, because there's a push to have AI be a positive thing in society, because there's a big push to get companies that are involved with AI funded. So we want to be positive. We want a lot of window dressing. We've always had AI. When our audio went digital, back in the late 60s, now I can't even remember, early 70s, years ago, we went from analog to digital. It was a lot easier to manipulate the sounds of whatever and create new sounds. It's just so sad today to have, you've got a bunch of studio musicians who are unfortunately a dime a dozen, because they're everywhere in the big cities, at least. Mm-hmm. And then you have, little Susie or Bobby who the music, the record companies are saying, "Here's our next heartthrob." And Big Susie goes in and sings a song that the industry wrote in a conference room with a bunch of songwriters. That's how they do it. And Susie sings a song one time, doesn't have to be in the right key or in tune, because the computer will fix everything. And that is I'd much rather use natural intelligence than drift into the artificial intelligence reign. It's our natural intelligence is so far beyond what they're calling artificial intelligence. Our brain is not a computer. It's way, way beyond what a computer can do, what the best computers can do.
It's like an intuition machine. That's the most amazing thing about the brain.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines of music, so the track, the road, the marathon, the ultra marathon, if you had to pick a genre or a style of music, what would be track music? What would be the road music, marathon and ultra marathon? I'll go first. I love acoustic, folksy songs. I'm thinking that's trail running. That's like the ultra run. It's nice and slow and meaningful and thoughtful, and you can be present. So I would say that. I don't know. What do you think the track? What would go with track running?
So I have always recommended that people don't listen to music during a workout or a race because I want them listening to their body. I want them enlisting the brain as part of I don't want their brain distracted. I want their brain part of the process. And I've written a lot about that. That being said, I have a playlist on my website, an exercise playlist, and I have, here are songs you can use to warm up and cool down with. Here are songs you can use for an aerobic run. Here are some anaerobic songs. And I have dance songs as well, because people who love to dance, it's as good as any other kind of training. And there are certain songs that are amenable to that, as opposed to songs that have a wanderingness to them where there's not a consistent beat. And I have a bunch of those because that's what came out. So my short answer and most important one is that I don't recommend people listen to music during exercise or racing. And you see it. You see it in baseball and football. You see it in, the marathon. People, in baseball, every player coming up to the plate has his own song. But he doesn't hear anything. He's in his zone.
And if he's listening to the song, we're in trouble.
He has zone. Now, this is entertainment for us, not for me, but I heard they still play baseball,
yes,
and they're probably still blasting these songs out. But I really, and likewise for runners who are working out with a partner or with a group of people, I don't like all the babble. That's why I don't like working out with anybody. I like to meditate when I run, because it is a meditation.
Yep. I find that too.
Don't interrupt me. Leave me alone. Shut up. Go get out of here.
If you're talking, you get out of breath and you're trying to have a conversation. And it can be helpful at some points in time, but there's nothing better than just being with yourself and just be there in the moment. Take it all in from the environment that you're in. If you're on the trail, pull that energy from nature. If you're in the city at the big marathon, like New York had so much energy that I was fighting it, Dr. Phil. Like I was trying to get the energy, but I'm normally a quiet runner, so I was battling that. So to your point about stress, that's a big stress that
it is. It's a mental, emotional stress. It's a physical stress because you've got these incredible frequencies going through your body, going into your brain. We're talking about loud music.
Absolutely.
It's really annoying. And I'll tell you, it's much worse when you're there, not as an athlete, but if you're there with an athlete and the gun goes off and you just stand there like an idiot. And so you don't get to release that, that piped up energy. You sort of, now you have to stress yourself waiting to hear where the runner is. Can I run across, these next few blocks and see the runner go by there? And I stopped competing during periods when I was really busy with runners flying around the world with different events. I just didn't have time. I tried competing in the races I would go to. They'd always give me a number and, I would jump into a race, but it was so stressful. So I stopped doing it. But the walking and running I did to find my way through wherever I needed to go was sometimes a better workout than if I had run the race.
So I just want to say, I know we're getting to the top of the hour here and truly, truly appreciate our time with you. But I know that you mentioned that you're not going to write a book. We've made that declaration on here. No more books going forward. But you are still a performing artist. You are a comedian now. What's coming up for you? What do you have, like, even in the next couple of months that you're looking forward to? What's coming out? What we can link to our listeners in the show notes there, just to promote all the great things you're doing.
I've got some musical shows, and the comedy is really new, and it came about because I had lectured at the end of after COVID. I had a lecture, and I hadn't lectured in 5 years or whatever, and I wondered if I still had it. Could I really lecture? And it was great. It was wonderful, and I realized that people still laughed at the silly things I said. A lot of it was improv. A lot of it was interactions with people would ask a question and I'd say something funny. So I never could remember jokes because I could never remember the punchline. But I could always improvise. And I realized that, gee, maybe I should write some of those things down, while I'm able to remember what they were. And I realized that, no, it's improvisation, and they should come out. But I started writing funny things down anyway, and I found out that that's what comedians do. They spend a lot of time writing funny things, and it's very much like songwriting. You write the lyrics, and it could take you 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes to write this song, but now you're going to spend the next month or two tweaking it. And that's what you do with comedy. And so I've written 6, 7, 8 minute, 10-minute stand-up comedy bits, which would take me hours to write, because you really have to be precise. And I started doing these stand-up shows, and it's been wonderful. And I've in my music, I've ramped up the funny things I would talk about between songs. Quite often I'm introducing a song, and I'm going to put a lot of funny stuff in there. And so it's not really, those are not all separate things. It's sort of all together. I've had some comedy stand-up things where I brought a little guitar with me, and because I have memories of Steve Martin when he was younger, and he would have this little banjo.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that could be good. And I did a thing on Happy Birthday. I don't know if you saw my age and Happy Birthday video, which is the first comedy thing I recorded. And I wrote a new Happy Birthday song. I found out that Happy Birthday, the song, was no longer copyrighted. And I thought, oh, it needs new lyrics and a new song. I'm going to write a Happy Birthday in a minor key, and it's going to be a real Happy Birthday is a it's a paradox. Happy, we're getting old again. No, sorry. Let's not play that game. I haven't celebrated my birthday for, I don't know, forever, since I was in college, I think. Ooh. So it's all kind of one big picture. Where I go from here, I don't know, but it's, I'm really, really busy with all of this stuff. And it's so exciting, and I don't know what's going to happen next.
That's kind of a great thing, though, right? You have
a
lot of things going.
I'm happy allowing it to happen,
and just let it. Right?
That's surprise that brain. That's what's
let
so
it
wonderful.
Happen.
Wonderfulness about it. Let it happen. Well, Dr. Phil, thank you very much. You have been a huge influence in the running and endurance and training field. There are so many runners that can point back to an inflection point of where they got healthier and faster
in the best manner possible, and it's all related to the work that you did, and we're many grateful runners, and we're grateful.
Well,
that
that's wonderful to hear. I mean, it's a I'm very lucky in that way that I can influence anybody. I mean, that was my mantra when I was in college. I was really depressed and physically sick, and I said, how am I going to get through this? And it was always, if I can make somebody healthy, it's going to be worth it. And so I appreciate you saying that, because it's not that you ever forget that, but it's nice to hear it once in a while. Thank you.